Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you here. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes to give everyone time to join. Again, welcome to everyone. And while we're waiting for everyone to join, feel free to tell us in the chat where you are joining us from. We'd love to see the international community coming together for this webinar. And again, we welcome you tonight with us. And my name is Rana Salman, and I'll be the host for just a couple of minutes for today's webinar. And I'm the Palestinian co-director of Combatants for Peace. For the ones who join us for the first time, Combatants for Peace is a joint Palestinian-Israeli movement that are working together to end occupation and bring a just peace and equality and freedom to our homeland. The movement was founded 20 years ago, and we're actually this year celebrating our 20 years anniversary. And also with us here, also our American Friends of Combatants for Peace and EU Friends of Combatants for Peace, which is a diverse community of international activists working in solidarity with our movement. Their work extends the movement beyond borders for collective liberation around the world. So thank you again for joining us tonight. This talk is part of our summer campaign, Emergency Assistance, Shared Resistance. The campaign is an opportunity for the international community to stand in solidarity with Palestinians and Israelis by investing in 4 urgent needs, which are protecting families, rebuilding communities, and strengthening women's leadership, and sustaining the activists leading this movement on the ground. Today's talk is Women on the Front Line of Change, and Building Just Peace Through Co-Resistance centers the voices of Combatants for Peace women leading nonviolent resistance, while also connecting their experiences to a broader global movement of women advancing justice, dignity, and collective liberation. In Palestine, Israel, and conflict zones around the world, women are not only among those who are affected by violence, displacement, and injustice. They are also at the forefront of protecting communities, resisting oppression, and shaping the conditions for a more just future. Today, we have 3 speakers who will share what it means to lead with courage, creativity, and compassion amid profound injustice and violence, and why investing in women leaders is an investment in a better future for us all. I'll just give some quick notes before we begin. If you please can keep yourselves on mute if you're not speaking, so that we can hear our speakers better. And feel free to ask your questions in the chat throughout our session. We have my colleague Benji here, has his name as Send Questions here. You can send the questions and we will try to answer them by the end of the session. And this session is being recorded, so we'll definitely share the recording afterwards. And just one more note, we will have the translation option. One of our speakers, Hanadi, will be speaking in Arabic, so we will have the English translation option. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you will see a globe icon or a button labeled interpretation. You can click on it, then choose the language English, so you can listen to your language when she's speaking in Arabic. And we will be together in this webinar for about 75 minutes, and I will be introducing our speakers. I'm pleased to introduce Hanadi Hussein Sayed. She is a Palestinian gender specialist, researcher, author, and community activist with Combatants for Peace, holding a master's degree in gender and women's studies. Her work focuses on women's leadership, displacement, and the impacts of armed conflict. She leads initiatives supporting women's empowerment and education, including Teach Gaza Students Online, and is the author of Challenges Facing Syrian Refugee Women in Zaatari Camp from a Gender Perspective. We also have Tova Kahan. She is a project manager of Protective Presence Consortium, specializing in community building and social responsibility. Her background includes large-scale agriculture management and coordinating international student programming at Yishvat Drisha. Tova specializes in bridging environmental practice with community engagement. She's a graduate of several advanced leadership and cultural facilitation programs and is currently training in the Tahila Leadership Program. We're also pleased to have Dr. Gail Bradbrook, a British activist, strategist, and co-founder of Extinction Rebellion, the global climate movement that grew to more than 1,100 local groups across 75 countries, a longtime organizer for environmental and social justice. She has helped inspire movements from transformative change around the world. And Gail holds a PhD in molecular biophysics and now works to strengthen communities through collaboration, resilience, and system change. I'm also pleased to have my colleague, Tiffany Goodwin-Bankamp. She's the executive director of American Friends of Combatants for Peace. Over the past 2 decades, she has led nonprofit organizations and community initiatives advancing human dignity, violence prevention, systems change, and grassroots leadership. Today, she works to strengthen the global movement for peace by building partnerships, supporting community-led actions, and advancing nonviolent solutions to injustice. She also will be moderating our talk today, so I'm happy to move it to you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Rana. And thank you all for joining us. I wanted to start our time today with a poem by Marge Percy called To Be of Use. It says, "The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest, and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud, botched. It smears the hands, crumbles to dust. Nothing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, hoppy vases that held corn, are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. It's an honor to be here today with the people that I love best, doing the work that is real and difficult and vital. It's especially an honor to center the voices of women in a time and in situations where we are facing the growing and continuous plight of decisions being made for our world, our societies, our children, our planet, our bodies, in a way that does not honor our wisdom or our experiences. And in the face of this, each of our three speakers is doing all they can to shape our world, support their communities, foster healing, cultivate justice, and protect the planet and each other. So I'm looking forward to learning from them today and getting to know them more deeply. And with that, Hannity, Tova, Gail, I'd like to spend a little time having our audience get to know you more. Hannity and Tova, I want to start with you. Many people joining us are meeting you for the first time as members of Combatants for Peace. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to ask if each of you could tell us a little about yourselves and what first drew you to the movement of CFP. Actually, Hannity, would you mind going first?
You're all muted. You're all muted. Unmute.
Hannity, are you able to hear me? Thank you. So Hannity, I'll just share the question again if that's okay. I wanted to ask if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what first drew you to the
تمام
Combatants for Peace
آسفة
movement.
شكرا لكم شكرا لك
Thank
ديفانا
you very
على
much.
القصيدة
Thank
كتير
you, Tiffany.
مؤثرة حلوة
Thank you for the poem. It was really touching.
أنا هنادي السيد من بير زيت
أنا هنادي السيد
بير
من
زيت
أنا from بير زيت رام الله.
أنا أصلا عشت حياتي
I lived all my childhood.
في الضفة أنا عشت طفولتي في كلاجئة في مخيم
I lived
الأردن.
most of my childhood in a camp in Jordan.
اتفاقية
I
السلام على
got
أمل
back
إنه
here
نعيش
uh,
إنه أبدأ حياة
uh,
هنا
in a hope to
حياتي هون
live
في بلدي كل
to live
يوم
here in my
كنت أعيش في
country.
المخيم كان يذكرني إنه أنا بلدي إلي بلد لازم
Every
أرجع
time
له يوم من الأيام.
like every day I
كان
live in
أملي
the
إني أرجع
camp.
وأبدأ حياتي
I
هون
lived with a
بالسلام.
hope to continue my life in
الأيام
peace,
مع الأيام
but
حسيت إنه
with
هذا
with the
الإشي
days,
يعني
I
صعب
felt that this thing is really
إنه
hard
مع الأوضاع مع الأشياء
with the
اللي بنشوفها كل يوم
situation
إنه لا
and the
مش
things we see
مش هاي
every
الحياة اللي
day.
كنت أنا متخيلتها.
It's not the life I imagined.
أنا جيت هون يعني بعمر
I came here
19 قررت أدرس هون درست في الجامعة
when
تخصصت
I was
بالجندر
19 years old. I
دراسات
specialized in
المرأة.
gender
كان هذا
and
المجال
women
اللي
studies.
دخلته
This
مش
field was
كإشي أكاديمي بس يعني
I entered this field
كان
not in an
حب يعني
academic
إن
not
لدعم المرأة
only for
لإثبات
academic
حقوق
purposes,
المرأة.
but also to support women's rights.
كان يعني كتجربة كان كتجربة إنسانية أكثر ما إنه كان إشي أكاديمي.
for a human
في مرحلة
experience.
الماجستير قررت إني
In the
أعمل
master
ريسيرش
period, I decided to
عن المرأة في الحرب أثناء
do
الحرب
a
وما بعد
research
الحرب.
about
كانت
the
الأزمة
women's before and
السورية
after women.
في
The
بداياتها فقررت إني
Syrian
أروح على مخيم
problems
اللاجئين
started
في الأردن
back then. I
وأعمل
decided to
ريسيرش
go
عن
to the
اللاجئات
Syrian camp in
سوريا.
Jordan
كانت كتير
and do
تجربة
a
ملهمة
research about
خلتني أعمل
the
كتاب
Syrian
عن هاي
women's. It
التجربة.
was really inspiring
قديش
experience,
علموني
and I
النساء
decided
هناك
to
إنه قديش
write
الواحد
a
في أقصى
book.
الظروف
The women
النساء
there
في
taught
أقصى
me,
الظروف إنها ممكن تكون
even in the
قوية
darkest times,
وتبني الحياة من
women
أول وجديد.
can
فكان هذا إشي
build
تجربة كتير
the
رائعة كانت
life
لي. التجربة الثانية
from
كانت إلي
the
في
beginning.
الحرب في غزة.
The
عملنا
second experience for
مبادرة
me was
لتعليم
in
طلاب
Gaza.
غزة
We
أونلاين.
made
كان جمعنا أكاديميين وأساتذة من حول العالم.
we start
كانت
as
مع
a
الطلاب
teachers
كتير
from around the world in Gaza.
يعني مش بس كنت أدرسهم هم كانوا
I
ينقلوا لي
wasn't just a
الصورة قديش
teacher
معاناتهم
for the
قديش
students.
الصعوبات اللي بيواجهوها
They
في حياتهم العادية في
also
دراستهم
teach us all
ومع
the
هيك
challenges
كانوا
they
مكملين
face
ومصرين على
and
تحقيق النجاح.
although
قبل أسبوعين
though
تقريبا كان في عنا سيمينار مشترك إسرائيليين وسطاء إسرائيليين فلسطينيين. نتائج طلابي في
1 week
كل
ago
النقاط في نفس اليوم
we
كان عندنا فيه
had
سيمينار. اتصلوا
had a
علي
sitting with
وحكوا لي
all the
نتائجهم،
teachers,
كانت نتائجهم كتير
and in the
مبهرة.
same days
علاماتهم
they have the
معدلاتهم
توجيهي
كتير رائعة.
the توجيهي the high
نتائجهم
scores the grades all the students
حتى يعني
reach
في
to me
نشطاء
and show
من
us
المقاتلون حكوا
our
معهم
their grades.
وباركوا لهم، وحتى كان في لفتة
We
كريمة من المقاتلون إنهم
congratulate them.
وزعوا كنافة حلوان لنجاح
They
طلابي.
gave us كنافة the
كتير
sweets
بتشكرهم يعني على هاي
for the
اللفتة.
students
في
graduating.
عندي طالبات جابوا علامات كتير عالية، يعني في عندي
I
طالبة
have a
جابت معدل
students
99
that got high
في طلاب جابوا
grades.
98.
One
بس
student got
للأسف
like
يعني
98
بسبب الأوضاع في غزة
and 99.
يعني في شك إنهم
But because of the
يكملوا
situation
تعليمهم أو
in
يطلعوا
Gaza,
برا غزة
they have
إنهم
no
يدرسوا
opportunity to go out of
اقتصاد
Gaza or to
وإقتصاد.
study
مش عارف
in the
يعني
fields
بحكي
they
أنا هذا
choosing.
الجهد اللي بذلوه على مدار السنة بتمنى إنه
All
يقدروا يحققوا
the
كل اللي
things
بدهم إياه وطموحاتهم إن شاء الله.
they did
بدي أحكي أنا
through
هلأ
the year,
ناشطة في مقاتلون
I hope
مقاتلون لأجل السلام.
they can achieve what they want to
اللي
do
جذبني إني
as a part
انضميت
of
إلهم
combatants for peace.
كان خلال حرب على غزة.
What
أنا قلت لكم
what
كان
made
عندي
me
طلابي
be a
كنت على
part
تواصل
of them
معهم.
when I
كانوا
was
ينقلوا لي
in
صور
Gaza, I was
لمعاناتهم في
when I was
خلال
teaching in Gaza, the
الحرب،
students they were
القصف، القتل،
sharing with me
المجاعة.
their
طالبتي هاي
the
اللي
hard
جابت
times.
99 مرات
One of
كانت
them,
تحكي لي
this
مس أنا
my
بقدرش أمسك
student who
القلم،
got
إيدي بدي
90
رجة من
years
الجوع،
old.
يعني أنا جوعانة. بدي
I
أمسك
can't.
القلم
She told me she
تطفي وأنا
cannot
بنقلها
hold a
يعني أو
pen.
بحكي معها. كانت
My
تصور
head,
المجاعة اللي
my hand
بتوصلنا
is
من غزة
shaking
كتير
out
يعني
of
صادمة ومؤلمة،
hunger.
بالإضافة اللي كنت أسمعه من طلابي. هذا كان يأثر علي
I
أنا
received a lot of
شخصيا
pictures from
على
Gaza.
حياتي أنا
Received a lot
عائلتي،
of
يعني ما
pictures
كنت
from
أجي
Gaza.
أطبخ
Really
أعمل
hard
أكل يعني ما أقدر
photos.
أحس بالذنب إنه أنا
This
باكل وهم ما
really
بياكلوش مثلا.
touched me, and
أنا
it was
قادرة
really
أعمل
hard for me
وأعمل
that
كل إشي بدي
I'm
إياه
eating and they
لأولادي
cannot.
وهم
I'm
لأ.
cooking and they
حتى
cannot.
لما كنت
I'm
أشوف في
doing
ناس
all of
عايشين
things
حياتهم
for my
طبيعية
children and
رغم
I
من اللي
can't.
بوصلنا من
And
غزة
even when I'm
وشو
seeing
بيصير
the
بغزة،
people
وإنه الناس عمالة يعني
living
كأنه العالم
their
بيتفرج
life
هاي المأساة وما
normally
بيحاول إنه
and they
يوقفها.
can't. Everyone
حتى
is
في يوم
seeing all the tragedy and
المقاتلون
not doing
كانوا منزلين
anything, are not
بوست
doing anything to
على
stop it.
صفحتهم
And
إنهم
once I saw someone posting on their social media page,
عاملين إضراب لمدة 3
they are
أيام عن
doing
الطعام.
they're like
أنا لما
stop
شفت
eating
البوست
for
بس
out of
يعني
solidarity
بوست بسيط
with
كان يعني بس
the
كان
people in
تأثيره
Gaza.
إيجابي على
I
الأقل
saw a
علي.
post, like a
وبحكي إنه
simple
في
post, but
حدا بده يعمل
it had
إشي.
a big impact on
صحيح
me.
الإشي
Like there's
بسيط بس هم
someone's
ترجموا اللي في غزة
who's doing
ترجموه على الواقع.
someone.
فصرت أحكي إنه هذا اللي بدي إياه، ورحت انضميت
I said that's
للإضراب
exactly what
اللي
I
كان
want.
لمدة 3
I
أيام
was part
تضامنا
of
مع
the
مجاعة في غزة.
solidarity with the
كانت
hunger in
تجربة
Gaza.
كتير
It
حلوة.
was a really good
بعديها
experience.
استمريت معهم، صار
After
يعملوا
that,
وقفات بشكل منتظم،
they did
وصرت في فريق تنسيق
protests
الوقفة،
every
الوقفات
time, and I
الاحتجاجية.
was a part of the people
الإشي
who
الثاني اللي جذبني يعني
did this
للمقاتلين بعدين لما صرت
solidarity.
أعرف عنهم أكثر هي فكرة
What
المقاتلون نفسها، إنهم
what
هم
made me join the
مقاتلون
combatants for
صادقين.
peace, the
منهم حدا
idea
بالجيش، منهم كان في
of
المقاومة
them.
المسلحة.
Part of the people who joined was part of
قرروا
the
بشجاعة
army.
إنهم
They
يجتمعوا
decided
يتحاوروا ينبذوا العنف،
bravely to
مع إنه
be
لسه
against
الصراع
violence,
قائم. بالعادة المقاتلون
although the
والخصوم ما
struggle
بيقعدوا
is
على ما بيجتمعوا مع بعض إلا
continuing.
بعد اتفاقية السلام أو مفاوضات.
Like usually the
فهم
parts
قرروا
of
إنه يعملوا هاي
the
الندوة
struggles
قبل
don't
ما
start
ينتهي الصراع،
speaking with
مع إنه
each
بالعادة هاي
other
لازم تكون بعد ما
till all of
ينتهي
the
الصراع،
problems
عفوا قبل ما
had end.
ينتهي الصراع. يعني هذا دل على إيش؟ دل على إنه
And
السلام
if
ما
they say
بيستنى، يعني
anything
السلام ما بيستنى بس
that
تنتهي
says
الحرب.
that
إنه
peace
السلام
does not
بحاجة لو ما
wait
انتهت
until
الحرب
the war
بحاجة
ends, even
قرار
that
خطوة
war
جريئة، ناس
didn't
قادرة على
end,
اتخاذ القرار
the peace
إنه لتحقيق
has
السلام.
to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannity, for sharing your journey, sharing the story of suffering as you watched things unfold in Gaza. And I am just so glad that we found you and you found us. And I'm so glad that you're here. I would love to turn this question over to Tova now. If you could tell us a little bit about you as well and what drew you to the Combatants for Peace movement.
Hey, thank you. Thank you all for joining. So exciting to see people coming in from all over the world. I'm Tova. I'm 24, currently in Jerusalem. I grew up in Chicago, very far away from this whole conflict. I grew up in a pretty robust, modern Orthodox Jewish community. Um, and in terms of the house that I grew up in, if anyone here knows Fruit of You and Me, I would say that was the soundtrack to my childhood. Very, liberal home, liberal values, and a very strong Jewish identity at the same time. And in terms of the education that I got in school and in summer camp, I was very active in religious Zionist youth groups. Not really a term that anyone defined for me at the time. But I knew from a very young age that I was Jewish, and that we were able to practice Judaism and feel safe because there was a Jewish homeland and a Jewish military. And these messages kind of seeped in. I know every child has their version of like a cops and robbers pretend game. And I just knew that our bad guys were called Arabs. Of course, I had never met an Arab or a Palestinian. I was taught to fear the Palestinian flag. The youth group that I grew up in would go to BDS protests with Israeli flags, and kind of stand across from the protests with the Israeli flags because Israel had a right to defend itself. And there was no really deeper explanation than that. The conflict was a very big political thing, not something that I had an opinion on, but we were Jews and we loved Israel, and it kind of ended there. A lot of the teachers in my middle school were Israelis who came to teach us about the land and the culture. And I remember when I was in fourth grade, Operation Protective Edge broke out, and my Hebrew teacher was called up to reserves duty. And he flew to the other side of the world to protect us. We wrote him letters, thanking him for his service, and he sent us back videos from the battlefield. And I was 12 years old looking up to these people. And I knew that I also was a devoted Jew, I like to think of myself as someone with strong values. And I decided that as soon as I could, I would also move to the land and join the IDF. The day that I finished high school, I got on a plane and came out here, very quickly joined the army. And I actually spent 3 years here before I ever met a Palestinian. And as it happens, after the army, I spent some time working in agriculture. And that was really my first time meeting Palestinians, talking to them. I worked side by side with Palestinians from the West Bank, harvesting watermelon. And we had a lot of fun. It was really long, hot days. And they taught me all their techniques. They taught me how to work quickly. They showed me videos of their children, and we got to know each other and joked around a lot. And shortly after October 7th and the atrocities that followed, I started to feel a lot of tension and fear in my environment, specifically between my Palestinian coworkers and their Jewish bosses. I remember one day, a small dispute, regular workplace argument broke out. I had my back turned and I turned around, and all of a sudden I saw one of my Palestinian coworkers with his back up against a car and his boss holding a knife to his chest. Like I said, I grew up in Chicago, but I definitely never been up close and personal with this kind of violence, and I really just wanted to get away from it. But I think it really attests to the fear that people were feeling at the time. A few weeks later, someone came by the field and started asking questions again about my coworkers, where they were coming from, what kind of citizenship, what kind of papers they had, not really questions I had ever asked myself. I was much more interested in hearing about their families and their lives. But at the end of that workday, there was an Israeli Border Patrol car waiting at the exit to the fields, and he arrested the entire staff. I went home, found out the next morning that my coworkers had spent the night under arrest. I knew that these people were not criminals, and I knew that they had kids at home, and I couldn't help wondering what their children thought when their dads didn't come home from work that day. And that was really a turning point for me, as I realized that this big political conflict that I wasn't allowed to have an opinion on was really ruining the lives of the people around me. And from that point, I set off on a journey to get educated, and that's how I found Combatants for Peace. I took part in the Freedom School of Faith, where I, along with other religious Jews, spent time studying religious texts as well as getting educated on the conflict, hearing from experts in the field, meeting people on the ground. And the work with Combatants for Peace has essentially continued until today. Today, I'm a project manager for the Protective Presence Consortium. We work to build a sturdy network for activists and for the communities that they're active in.
Thank you, Tova. So good to hear about your journey. And the first time I met Tova, I was visiting a Bedouin village near the Jordan Valley, and she was spending the night there with colleagues, providing protective presence. And I'm so glad that you stayed with the movement and you're continuing to grow with us as one of our young leaders. My next question is for Gail, who is also new to our audience. Gail, it is such a gift to have you join us as an international ally and partner in work for just peace. You've spent decades building movements for climate justice and social transformation. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and specifically, I'm curious what first convinced you, as now an internationally renowned leader, what convinced you that ordinary people could organize to create extraordinary change?
Hi, thanks, Tiffany. So I'm here in the southwest of England, but I'm from Yorkshire in the north, and my dad was a coal miner, which means a lot to me still. I was part of the fossil fuel industry and part of the injustice that happened when the coal mining industry was closed down by Mrs. Thatcher well, started in the 80s but finished in the 90s. I'm a mother of two boys. They're 18 and 20. I'm a scientist, so I've been taught to ask questions. And I was part of the tax justice movement for some time as well. I understood that just this idea that there's some kind of fair economic system was a nonsense and that the rules were rigged. The origin story for me of Extinction Rebellion is one that it came from a deep prayer. I'm a practicing pagan, if you like. I have a Christian heritage, but I, for want of a better phrase, consider myself a witch, a junior witch, and my practice has been prayerful. Extinction Rebellion arose from that moment. There'd be more to say about that, but I had a deep conviction that there was a necessity of mass civil disobedience, of a collective body of people, but actually the prayer was for a compassionate revolution, and that we would need acts of art, heart, and civil disobedience. All three were necessary. After we in the UK, we sort of achieved our three demands relatively quickly, and at the same time, never expected that a system of oppression would ever really deliver on our demands. It can't and it won't. Our job, I think, was to expose and reveal the reality of a hateful and dominating and controlling system, and to enable people to find each other and build different systems together. We went on to start a little branch of Extinction Rebellion called Money Rebellion. We focused on the role of the economy and banks, and that included taking a hammer to the banks. I'm actually here with a Sylvia Pankhurst t-shirt on. She's a beautiful elder whose shoulders we stand on, who was both an internationalist and a women's suffragette. Because of some actions of, I consider them non-violent, peacefully breaking windows, I ended up in court on 2 jury trials, and they threw out the jury in the first trial. I don't need to get into the details, but I had that experience and a willingness, based in privilege, I'll say, to go to jail. Although I didn't end up there, I just ended up having to scrub boots and pick litter up for a few months. I organised in something called XRB in the Change as part of a move both in myself and wider that knew that we hadn't been listening to our visionary leaders of colours and cultures in the movement in the UK. It was a really beautiful time of listening and developing an overstanding, like to see things more in their historic and cultural context. We worked with young people who were bringing forwards educational revolutionary processes. One of them is called PRALER, Planet Repairs Action Learning Educational Revolution, which is about developing addressing the miseducation system. And I was invited to go to the Alliance of Sahel States in sub-Saharan Africa to meet with the decolonial struggles that are currently happening there and understand them. And as a result of that, I wrote a blog called something like The Leadership Able to Bring About a Just Transition, having understood that there was a place of really centering people racialized as white and Europeans as the usual savior nonsense, and that internationalist responses were a critical part of the change that was needed. That blog is on a buy me a coffee site. If you put my name in, no need to buy me a coffee. Last year I went to Tamira, and there I met dear Suli Khatib, who's one of the co-founders of Combatants for Peace. And I also hosted his collective in Stroud, the Ripples Collective, and I've since joined their advisory board. Does that answer your questions, Tiffany? I think there's a intro. Thank you.
Yes. Gail, it's so nice to bring you into this space with us as someone connected to our work and also organizing in so many different ways globally. Before I move back to getting a little more into the details of what's happening on the ground in the lives of Tova and Hannity, I actually wanted to ask you, because today we're really trying to learn from women leading and the ways that women lead and what they are doing within their place and space and with their lives. So I wanted to take a moment to invite some of your perspective as a global leader transcending borders and working in different types of communities and cross-causal. Many of the systems driving violence, inequality, and environmental destruction were built on models of power rooted in domination and control, and we certainly see this in Palestine and Israel. Through your decades of movement building, what have you learned about leading differently? And what unique qualities or ways of working have you witnessed women bring to movements that our world needs now more than ever?
Thank you for the questions and the honour to stand here and attempt to answer them. I was really fortunate early on as Extinction Rebellion sort of exploded onto the scene, to be mentored by an amazing peace activist from Israel called Mickey Kashtan, who many of you may know Mickey's work. And Mickey did many things that were really helpful. In fact, to the point that I used to say, I wish we could have an app, a Mickey app, because she was so good at understanding the core of what people's needs are when they're in a distressed moment. But one of the things that Mickey shared was a definition of leadership as having two main aspects to it, and I hope I'm doing her justice. One would be that there's a purpose that a specific group may have, and leadership supports the group to move in the direction of achieving that purpose, and understanding its vision. But as the way you do that is to care for the whole, to care for all the group. So you're not there as an individual person thinking about what your plan and your idea is, but what's our collective intelligence and our collective ability to move towards purpose. And what that requires in leadership is to slow down and to listen and to be relational and to understand that the systems of domination and control show up within us, within all of us. It's the nervous system state as well as something that lives in structural ways, in the ways that the economy and governments are organized and so on. So if we understand that it lives within us, then we have our own work to do. And that's never to, sidestep the external facing work, as it were, for inner work, but both come together. And in fact, again, Mickey sort of suggested that the inner work that we would do would be led by the challenges that we face within our leadership. So the challenges arise. It's very noisy here today, I apologize. The challenges arise, and that gives us a guidance as to where we need to go and do our work. Some of it is more spiritual. I personally work with plant medicines and in ceremonial ways for healing. And the other part of this is to reclaim a really big vision of a motherist way of organizing, a motherist or a matrifocal way of being together. And that can show up very differently in many different cultures and arise from the land. But essentially, what it's about is that the focus of a community and how we can judge how well we're doing is on our attention on the next generations and their thriving. And if the so-called culture is not focused on that, we've got a very big problem, which, by the way, we've got a very big problem. So that's a few thoughts. I'm trying to be mindful of time here, Tiffany. Is that?
Yeah, thank
Good.
you. Yeah, you touched on two things which sort of draw us back to Hannity and Tova. One of them is, the work of a leader to slow down, to listen, to be relational, to understand. And, Hannity as a historian and someone who is documenting women's experiences, listening, um, translating, giving voice to, and then the idea of the ability of the next generation to thrive. Tova being one of our youngest activists, and our work at CFP, as a movement, a collective movement, doing all we can to empower that next generation, and Hannity too, working with the students of Gaza. Um, so I want to actually turn back to both Hannity and Tova for a minute, specifically about what's happening on the ground and their experiences, and how they're using their wisdom as women within these spaces, within their spaces, and within the land. Hannity, for you, when people hear about women living through war, occupation, and displacement, they often imagine women primarily as victims. But what do you want people to know about the leadership role that CFP women are playing right now? What are women facing and how are they responding?
مظبوط. لما كانت
This is
تجربتي
correct. From my
لما واحد
experience,
يسمع نساء تحت الحرب
when
وشو
someone
بصير
hear
معهم بتبهر
women
وبتخيل.
under
بس أنا من
occupation
تجربتي
and in war,
مع النساء
they
اللاجئات
see
في
them
غزة
as victims.
تعلمت
From
إنه
my
النساء
experience with
بأقصر
women
الظروف في
in
أقصر
wars and
الأوضاع
from my work with women
مش ضحايا
in Gaza,
ناجيات
or
عندهم
even
قدرة هائلة على
in the
التكيف، عندهم
darkest of
قدرة
times,
هائلة
they
على إعادة
they
بناء
know how
المجتمع، على إعادة بناء الحياة.
to
ما
adapt
بقدر أحكي عنهم
and to build
ضحايا بمجرد اللي
a better
اللي بوقع عليهم. أنا بحكي
situation,
عنهم
better
ناجيات
future.
بأنها هن كرجال
I
عملنا
I see them
أو
as
صنعنا أو التغيير اللي بدنا
heroes
في المجتمع.
who can like build a difference
هلا
in
إحنا
the.
على بدي أحكي عن المقاتلون
I
نفسهم،
want to speak about
كيف النساء
the combatants,
يقودوا داخل
how the women's lead in.
إحنا عندنا في أي مجتمع أبوي
For us
النساء
in a
بتعاني
better
من انحسار أدوارها، يعني ما بتقدر
in
تكون
our
تشتغل في
in
الحيز
our
العام
community.
بحرية أو تكون إلها
They
مساحة
prevent
إنها
women
تشتغل
from working
بحرية في
freely.
الحيز العام أو إنها تطلع
They don't
مظاهرات أو
give the
إنها
women
تشتغل في
enough freedom to
عدة
work
مجالات، يعني تكون
in a
محدود دورها
different
فيها.
aspects.
هذا في
They
في المجتمعات
all the
التقليدية
women
العادية، فما بالك لما
have
يكون نضيف عليها تحديات جديدة زي الاحتلال، عسكرة المجتمع،
a small window
هذا بضيف
to
تحديات جديدة.
walk around
المرأة بتسعى إنها تتخلص
freely.
منها، بس أجل
The
الاحتلال
women
ضاف لها
work
عقبات
to
جديدة إنها
to
تأدي دورها
prevent
وتقوم
this from
بعمل
happening,
عمل
and the
في هذا
women
المجال
always
الحيز العام.
try to work
لو
freely as
أحكي عن
everyone.
المقاتلون،
I
هي
want to
تأسست
speak about combatants. It started
أغلبها رجال، بس أنا بدي أطلع عليها هلا.
it started
أغلبها
mainly
هي
with men,
قيادات
but
نسائية
as I
فيها،
see it
يعني
right
أغلبها،
now,
يعني إحنا إلى فريق
it's mostly women
فريق
lead.
تنسيق الوقفات عندنا أغلبه بنات، يعني نساء عفوا.
Most of the protests
بنقوم
we
بتنسيق
made,
المظاهرات، بنطلع في المظاهرات، نكون في
most of
الصفوف
us
الأمامية.
are women. We always on the front lines of every
هذا العمل،
protest.
يعني أنا بدي أحكي عني
And in this
يواجه
work,
الواحد
I want to speak about
صعوبات،
myself.
يعني
Everyone
في
face
إني
challenges.
أنضم لمظاهرة أو أنضم لعمل مشترك.
I face
يعني
it's
اعتراضات
really hard for
اجتماعية.
me personally to be
بكون
part of
إشي زي ما
protests
حكيت لك صعوبة المرأة تقييدها تعمل
because
في
they
الحيز العام،
prevent
إنها تطلع في
women to be
مظاهرة.
part of
بتخاف من الملاحقة
every
أو
protest.
الاعتقال.
بدها
تواجه
every woman
شعورها،
fear
يعني شعور
the being arrested.
المرأة، يعني شعور
She
اتجاه
has to
الطرف الآخر.
fight
يعني أنا بقدر اللي
the
بيطلعوا
feeling
معي
of
في
feelings
المظاهرات
of
من
other.
الإسرائيليين، يعني كتير
I
كلهم
really
كرام،
admire
بس في
everyone who
مرات
go to the protests with me,
الشعور
but sometimes
تجاههم،
the feeling
يعني أنا
towards
مرة
them.
صارت حادثة، ابني بدرس في جامعة بيرزيت،
Someone
اقتحموا الجيش الجامعة،
when my
وأطلقوا
son was
النار
in
بشكل مباشر على
Birzeit
الطلاب، وكان في
University,
إصابات.
they attacked the university and they
أنا
shooted
ابني كان يومها
against
في
the
الجامعة عندي
students.
امتحان، يعني ما بقدر
That
أوصف
day
لك
my
قديش، يعني
son
كان
was in
شعوري
the
يومها.
university.
هلا بعد
I
فيها
cannot describe my
فترة قصيرة
feeling
كان
that day.
تنسيق وقفة
After
للمقاتلون،
a
نطلع
while, we
وقفة
did a protest with
احتجاجية.
combatants against what happened.
يعني كان الإشي صعب إني بدي
It
أشوفهم،
was really hard
يعني
because
بدي أشوف
I had
إسرائيليين
to
أو
see
بدي
them,
أطلع معهم وقفة، وأنا
the
كان يومها
Israelis,
بتذكر الخوف
to see the Israelis
قبل
and
كم
to
يوم
stand
على
with
ابني،
them
اللي هو بسبب إن كان ممكن
with the
أفقده بأي
fear
لحظة.
that I had
فبرضه
towards
يعني
my
هذا الإشي
son.
صعب، إنه بدي يعني بالرغم من إني بحبهم اللي معي أو بقدرهم،
This was
ما
really
بمنعني
hard.
هذا الشعور
Although I
تجاههم.
love the people I work with, it does not stop the way I feel toward them, the struggle.
يعني مرات الواحد بده
Sometimes the person
يعني
have
الحين ما
to.
في بيت في
There
فلسطين، يعني في الضفة
there's
ما في
no
عنده شهيد،
one
ما في عنده أسير، ما في
house
عنده
in Palestine who does not have
وإنك تطلع في
someone
مظاهرة
who
مشتركة
died or got
مع
arrested.
الإسرائيليين.
So to go
يعني هذا
out in a protest with
إشي صعب.
Israelis
يعني
is really hard.
مرات بكون صعب، بس ما بنكر إنه
Sometimes it's really hard,
لهم دور
but sometimes they
دور
have,
مهم إنه نطلع
but like
ونعكس
I don't deny that they have a big
كل القضايا اللي
role
بتمس الشارع
and
الفلسطيني. إحنا بنطلع تقريبا كل شهر بشكل منتظم
speaking out
ونعمل
about
وقفات،
the
تظاهرات، تضامن
Palestinians
مع مزارعين في القرى
challenges.
الفلسطينية.
We go with the people
هذا
in the
الإشي أنا
Palestinian villages.
بقدر إنهم بيجوا بوقفوا معنا
I
بروحوا
really
معنا
admire
ولهم دور
Israelis standing
حاسم،
with
يعني
us.
يكونوا معنا
They have
يحمونا،
a really
يكونوا
big
معنا في الصفوف
role
الأمامية.
in protecting us. They stand in the front lines.
وفي يعني أنا بدي
And
أحكي
there
أنا
is,
لأني في الجندر وإيش
I am a part of
لما أروح على
the
مكان أو
gender
على
field.
مظاهرة
When I go to
كنت
any
أشوف
place or a
قديش
protest,
نسبة
I see
النساء إلى نسبة
I see
الرجال
the
المشاركين
percentage
صراحة.
between
فأنا كنت
women to
مرات
men.
أشوف
So
مين أكثر
sometimes
مشاركين،
I
النساء ولا
see
الرجال في وقفاتنا،
I
فكنت
see
ألاقي إنه
what
العدد
more
النساء أكثر من عدد الرجال غالبا
more
في أغلب
women or
الوقفات
men in the
الاحتجاجية.
protests. Most
فهذا
of the
أنا
time in the
يعني هذا
protest,
إشي
men
بخصوص
are more than women.
لأنه مجالي وهيك،
Sorry.
فبحب إنه النساء تكون في موقع مثل هذا برغم
Most
من
of the
كل
time in the
القيود
protests,
والعوائق
women
والتحديات.
are more of the women, so this make me really happy. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Hannity, so much. And thank you for speaking also to the solidarity, the importance of solidarity work, which is something that Tova co-leads with Palestinian communities, and hopefully you guys have had a chance to do some things together in the field. So Tova, speaking of protective presence and solidarity work, you being a leader of protective presence, I've met you, you're like not even 5 feet tall, I'm pretty sure. You're tiny and you're young, and um, your protective presence work places you alongside families, Palestinian families, facing extreme violence from settlers. Many people would find it difficult to imagine a young woman choosing to stand in those situations. I'd like to hear from you what protective presence looks like on the ground day to day, what you've discovered about the unique role of women and young women um, that they play in protecting communities through this work.
Yeah. Protective presence looks really different depending on the day. Today it was too hot for the settlers, so it looked like a lot of sitting around with my Palestinian hosts, drinking tea, talking about life and politics, which are the best days. But when it doesn't look like that, when there is a need, when there is a threat of violence, we, the Israelis or internationals on the ground, will get a call to come to the place of interaction, and really just stand between violent settlers and Palestinian homes, really just, putting our bodies between and trying to de-escalate the situation. And we have found that our presence is able to lessen violence. We're not too naive. I will say that the community that I met Tiffany in, where I was doing protective presence, has since been violently banished from their homes, and we are in touch with them in exile. But we found that our presence allows people to, hold on a bit longer, and also really shows the people there who are facing violence day in, day out, that they're not facing it alone. As far as the role of women in this space, I think that people, at least when I started getting involved, as Tiffany said, I'm all of 5 feet, little blonde girl, and settlers didn't really know how to respond to me, and we definitely use that to our advantage. I think women in general can have a very unique impact in these violent spaces. Settler boys are scared to hit girls, and I use that to my advantage. And also when I'm strategizing, I can think about the ratios of people I'm sending to certain places. And I do find that I can have a calming presence, and I try to use that to our advantage.
Thank you, Tova. Yeah, someone was asking in the chat about how oftentimes the protective spaces can kind of be a bit paternalistic, and sometimes when males lead it, look aggressive, and not so much the calm that I saw you help bring to those spaces and in those situations. And it takes great courage to be willing to bring that feminine, more maternal, calm presence. And I agree, it is really, really important that we find the courage as women to bring ourselves in those spaces and change the energy and the dynamic. Um, Gail, you now have turned into an angel alien with the light coming from above, and she had told me she won't see herself, so to let her know if that happens. And I just wanted to ask you, because we are talking about solidarity right now. There's a question for you about what solidarity may look like for
Yeah.
international movements. So, as an international leader for activists and movements outside of Palestine and Israel, what do you think meaningful solidarity with women like Hannah and Tova look like in this moment? Where have you seen courageous examples of international solidarity, and what more do you believe international movements are being called to do in this moment?
Yeah, thanks again for the question. And the obvious answer is I'd want to hear from Hannah and Tova a response to that. But given the questions pointed at me now, I think there's a number of things to say. I won't list them all, but as a British woman, the British complicity needs to be named, and it has been across the UK. People have been standing on street corners in solidarity. There was sort of red lines action. A friend of mine, Arthur Hobhouse, is part of Heirs of Slavery. It's called erroneously, really, but anyway, has in his heritage in his family the person who wrote the Balfour Treaty. So to be using power in that way and agency to name complicity. There's been a lot more, which I think is part of the feminine ways of supporting connection through community. So there's a specific spiritual community that I'm part of, and we're keeping in connection through a person with Holy Lands Trust, and obviously sharing resources where we can and support. Maybe the biggest thing that's happened in the UK that I'm certainly aware of and participating in, I don't know how much this is known internationally, but is support for an organisation called Palestine Action. And by the way, me just saying that in this space could get me arrested. Palestine Action have taken actions to close down Elbit Systems, who manufacture weapons that are used to destroy Palestinian communities and kill people. And they used the tools of nonviolent civil disobedience to disrupt those weapons systems. They were prescribed in the UK as a terrorist organisation. And the climate movement, in particular through sort of the court cases, including the types of one that I was involved in,
It seems we have lost Gail. Gail, you're frozen. Okay.
doing the bidding of of the Israeli government. And so
Gail, can you hear me? All right. Unfortunately, her screen is freezing. Let me just message her. Okay. So I'm just letting her know.
I'm back now. Sorry.
You know,
about that. It's
you spoke
back.
about the technology forces are working against you because as you spoke, it just froze you and we couldn't hear you.
Well, it's probably a coincidence, but you never know. I was talking about Palestine.
It seems to still be freezing her. So, I guess maybe while we wait for her system to clear out a bit, maybe she'll get a better reception soon. But to her point, she did say that she would like to turn that question to Hannity and to Tova regarding what solidarity in this time from the international community means to you, what you would like to see, or what are you seeing from the international community? What else would you like to see in this time? And what would be meaningful solidarity to you right now from those of us abroad? Hannity, would you mind sharing first?
طبعا كل ما بيصير بغزة والضفة
Of course, every time when something happened in Gaza and in West Bank, I want everyone from all around the world to say it. Everything is happening and everything is happening in Gaza. Everyone is saying that the war stopped, but we see every day that there's bombing and killing. There's nothing like the war stopped. I want everyone all around the world to see the picture clearly. Look at Gaza, look at the West Bank. Look at us, how we suffer. Look what happened to us. I really appreciate all the words that took solidarity with us, with the Palestinian people, but there is not enough things that done to stop the tragedy that happened on Gaza. They are going on protests, but nothing in reality had changed. And in West Bank, the situation is escalated. All the arrested is becoming more. The people in Gaza and West Bank is facing really hard things, even if there are solidarity from all around the world. And in reality, we're not seeing this. We're not seeing changes. The solidarity is a really good thing, but we need a real change in our day-to-day. The things we see at checkpoints, the people dying at the checkpoints. Not long ago, a girl died because they didn't let the ambulance go in from the checkpoint. Another boy died at the checkpoint because they didn't allowed to open the gate of the open the checkpoint. In Gaza, every day they're killing and bombing people and small children. There were no ceasefire. Even like small changes for the day-to-day things from 3 years didn't happen. They're not allowing people to go abroad. We want to see changes on the day-to-day. Thank you very much.
I realize, putting that burden of what our solidarity should look like, could look like on you is not fair. and that it is incumbent upon us to figure out how to stand in solidarity um, in the ways that we can here, and then to respond in the ways that you would invite us. And I just want to thank CFP and many of the Palestinian villages right now who are inviting us to come for the olive harvest in the fall. Um, and there's a large group of people from the US and abroad who are coming at the request of Palestinians to that olive harvest. So I thank you for that invitation. And also want to say that we do take ownership for the ways that the places where we live, whether it's in the EU or the US, our governments are helping perpetuate harms, and realize we have even a responsibility here to clean house and to hold our leadership accountable, um, because we are a part of the harms being caused. Tova, as someone who is from the US who now lives in Israel and does solidarity action in the West Bank, what would you say to others who are living internationally in terms of what solidarity could look like right now?
I'd really encourage you all to keep doing what you're doing. I think, getting on this call was a step in the right direction. And I ask that you amplify our voices. I'm in touch with a few people in the US, and I hear that people can get very bogged down by a need to define are you Zionist? Are you anti-Zionist? BDS, anti-BDS? Kind of this need to put people in boxes. And that's a very human need, but I think that something that the international community could maybe learn from the people on the ground is to be a bit more pragmatic. I don't have the privilege of asking people who want to help if they're Zionist or anti-Zionist. We're taking all the help we can get. So that's something that I would like to bring to this audience as well, to really take a step towards hearing stories from real people, whether it be us here in the land or people who you think you might not agree with in your own communities. I think that I benefited a lot when I stopped thinking in terms of all Zionists or all Palestinians, and that's something that I wish for you as well.
Thank you, Tova. I think Benji is putting in the chat, anybody who does want to come to the olive harvest, there is still time to sign up. It's being done with a coalition called Protect the Harvest. It's fully organized. There's days of harvest as well as evenings of meeting groups on the ground, community building, connecting with other internationals who are committed to a just peace in Palestine and Israel. So we invite you to come to join us, and you can learn more by clicking on the link in the chat. We just have a little brief time left, and I think Gail is back with us. Let me see. Let me find her. One moment. Gail, I'm so sorry.
Directly
There you
to
are. Yep.
Yeah, one can start to get a little bit wondering what's going off here. But I did just post a message to you just to share what I was trying to share about what the movements are doing here. Maybe you could just read that out rather than me.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm in the wrong chat. Let me find a message. Oh, hold on. Scrolling through all of these messages that I haven't seen yet. So, yeah. Okay. So you were sharing that the climate movement in the UK used many of its structures and processes to support a group called Palestine Action that's been dismantling factories of Elbit systems whose weapons are used against Palestinian people. So direct action as a form of solidarity. Because Palestinian activists were being acquitted by juries, embarrassing for the British government in hoc with the Israeli government, they chose to prescribe this group as terrorists. A real nonsense, she wrote. So 3,000 of us have held up a simple sign saying, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action, leading to many scenes of especially older people being carried off by the police, including myself 3 times. Wow, Gail. Which has further highlighted the struggle and complicity. I've actually seen this online. We're all facing charges of terrorism now. I'm so sorry. Which has some specific consequences, including could be prevented from international travel as a result. Recently, some have escalated and said they are members of Palestine Action and face 14 years in jail. Palestine activists have had draconian sentences. Thank you for sharing about this, and certainly I'm in awe of your bravery and your will to do what is just and right in your eyes at great risk. So, really, there is a picture of the world that we all see right now, and um, it is a painful picture in many ways, and oftentimes to behold. Um, we are seeing great injustices. We are seeing horrific violence. We are seeing unthinkable murder and death. We are watching our planet die. We are watching those in power become stronger um, and create greater harms. And at the same time, we all here in this space do hold a vision for a different world. And we don't so often get to speak of that thing that we dream of, the vision that we have, the world that we hold in our souls and our hearts, that we are imagining and that we are working for and living for. And sometimes it's hard to remember what it looks like, I will be honest, that thing that originally brought me here, the world that I want to see. So I wanted, as we closed, before we invite Rana in, I wanted to invite Hannity and Tova and Gail in just a few sentences to share with us the vision of the world that you hold in your mind and your heart, the thing that you see, the world that you are working for. Can you tell us the world that you envision, that you long for? And maybe we'll actually start with Gail. Since we've been going Hannity, Tova, Gail, we'll go Gail, Tova, Hannity.
I don't know what's going off with my internet. I'm so sorry, but I didn't quite hear. And are you hearing me okay? Would you give me a wave?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gail, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I can. I can try to speak to the question of movements and longing, if that's where we are.
So we're actually just wanting to ask, as we're closing, if we want to hold a vision of the world that you imagine, um, as we close. So if you could share just a few sentences about the future, that you envision, the world that you imagine, the world that you're working for.
I mean, I think there's a very brilliant example, and I know there's problems and issues, but in the Rajavan revolution, of how women's leadership is absolutely baked into the democratic confederalism, with there's always a woman leader as part of all the different commune structures. And to take it to a more sort of esoteric level, I would say that women are closest to being able to relearn how to co-create with life. You know, we're part of life, and we're going to figure and find our way through these times by listening to the life in our bodies, the life in our wombs if we have them, and there are many things that we'll imagine when we dance with life in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Tova?
In protective presence work, we spend a good amount of nights sleeping outside, which is always a nice experience for me. You know, the quiet, a lot of the time out in the desert under the stars, and kind of that feeling of feeling very small against creation, and also security. And that's a feeling that I wish to all the people between the river and the sea. I don't think it's too much to ask.
Not too much at all. Kennedy?
أنا بعتقد إنه اللي بنعمله هلا
I
بالوقت
think what
الحالي
we're
هو
doing
رح
right
يأثر علينا
now,
في المستقبل. أنا شايف
that's
إنه
what
النساء
will affect us in
هن
the future. I
أكثر
see the
قدرة
women
على تحقيق السلام.
have more
وصولهن
abilities
لمناصب
to achieve peace
ومواقع تأهلهن لهذا
and
الإشي.
to be
بعتقد
in
إنه رح
leadership,
يساعد بصنع السلام. فأنا بدعم النساء في
be,
كل المجالات.
in
تمكين النساء في
the
كل
women being in
المجالات. هذا رح
leadership
يعطينا
will
مجتمعات
achieve us
أكثر
peace
قادرة
and
أكثر على صنع السلام.
to have
أتمنى هذا الإشي
will give
بالمستقبل
us
إنه يكون إشي
communities
مستقبل
living in
نسمع
peace
مفضل سلام
and
إنه لأولادنا، إنه في المستقبل نقدر
to
نحكي
build
لأولادنا إنه إحنا عملنا
better
إشي
places for our
في
children and to
وقت
tell
وأخذنا
them
قرارات
that
صعبة بهذا الوقت. شكرا لكم.
we did things and we took hard decisions to change the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time today, and thank you for sharing both about yourselves and the work that you're doing, your wisdom and the visions that you're holding. I hope everyone heard something that will sit in their minds and hearts and bodies in the days to come and strengthen your activism wherever you are. And with that, I want to hand things over to Rana for a few final words.
Thank you, Tiffany. I was waiting for the technical support to unmute me. Thank you so much for our amazing speakers. Thanks to Hanadi, Tova, Dr. Gail, and Tiffany for sharing your time, expertise, and valuable insights with us tonight. You're all amazing, courageous women who are protecting communities, resisting oppression, refusing despair, and building a different future. Thank you for sharing your visions, because this work that you're doing and that future actually requires a lot of solidarity and support. And thanks to all of our participants for joining us today. If this conversation has moved you, I invite you to support our summer solidarity campaign. Thanks to the extraordinary generosity of Stacey Lawson and Aline Bayard, who are joining us today. Every gift will be matched dollar for dollar, up to $8,000. Whether you give $25, $100, or more, today your gift will go twice as far. Stacey and Aline, thank you for your leadership, generosity, and belief in the women of Combatants for Peace.
And
If you have already given,
Malkabina as well, I'm so sorry. She joined at the end of the match. Malkabina is also matching, so thank you, Malkabina.
Thank you. Sorry, I haven't seen you in the... And yeah, if you have already given, help grow this movement by inviting others to join in, and we'll send everyone the recording of today's conversation along with a shareable campaign message. And we invite you to stay connected with our movement. You can subscribe to Combatants for Peace and American Friends of Combatants for Peace Communications, and join us for future educational events, advocacy opportunities, and solidarity actions. And I hope to see many of you at the olive harvest season this year, this fall. And I just want to thank you again for your participation and your thoughtful questions and your active participation. And we look forward to see you and welcome you at our future webinars. So have a good, wonderful day and a wonderful evening for people who are staying in different places. See you soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.